The rain had just stopped when Elena Alvarez tucked the last strand of her daughter's hair into a pink ribbon. The 6-year-old squirmed impatiently on the kitchen stool, her legs swinging back and forth as she held onto a half-eaten pancake. "Hold still, Lila." Elena's voice was soft but firm, a voice born out of years of raising her daughter alone. She tied the ribbon into a neat bow, then pressed a kiss to the crown of her daughter's head. The scent of baby shampoo and maple syrup filled her nose. "Do you think Daddy would like this ribbon?" Lila asked out of nowhere, blinking up at her mother with wide hazel eyes. Eyes that weren't just hers. Elena froze. For a second, the kitchen around her blurred. She forced a smile. "Your daddy... Well, ribbons look good on anyone, especially you." Lila seemed satisfied, turning back to her pancakes. But Elena's chest tightened the way it always did when the word daddy slipped past her daughter's lips. Lila had never met him, and if Elena had her way, she never would. The small town of Marigold Creek had become their sanctuary, tucked far from the glittering city lights, far from the corporate towers and luxury hotels that once defined Elena's life. Here, she was not the woman who had walked away from a man everyone feared and worshipped in equal measure. Here, she was just a kindergarten art teacher who paid rent late sometimes and baked too many muffins on Sundays. But at night, when the house was quiet and Lila's soft breathing filled the air, memories crept back like unwanted ghosts. The boardroom's gleaming windows reflecting the skyline. The sound of his voice, deep, commanding, magnetic. The way his cold gray eyes softened only when they looked at her. Adrian Steele, the man she had once loved so fiercely, it nearly destroyed her. The man she left behind without a word. That evening, as Elena graded crayon-scribbled art projects at her kitchen table, her phone buzzed. It was her friend Naomi, the only one in Marigold Creek who knew fragments of her past. "You're coming to the community fundraiser, right?" Naomi's voice chirped over the line. "Don't even try to hide, Elena. The mayor's wife is counting on your brownies." Elena smiled faintly. "I'll be there." Lila's excited about the games. "Good. And wear something other than your teacher cardigans, please. You're too pretty to be wasting away like this." Elena rolled her eyes but said nothing. She wasn't wasting away. She was surviving. She was building a life on her own terms, far from Adrian Steele, far from the pain of his cold indifference and the night that shattered her illusions. Still, when she hung up, Elena lingered by the window. Her reflection stared back at her. The same dark hair, the same full lips, but eyes lined with secrets. If Adrian ever found out about Lila, no, she couldn't let that happen. The fundraiser was lively, filled with small-town chatter and the aroma of fried chicken. Children ran across the field, faces painted like tigers and butterflies. Elena watched from the sidelines as Lila laughed, chasing after balloons. For a moment, it felt almost perfect. Then her gaze snagged on a glossy magazine lying on the refreshment table. The cover headline screamed in bold letters, "Adrian Steele expands empire with record-breaking acquisition." Her heart stopped. His photo was larger than life. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a black tailored suit, eyes like frozen silver. He hadn't changed. Or maybe he had harder jaw, sharper presence. Elena's hands trembled as she shoved the magazine under the napkins, her chest burning. Even in a town this small, even in a crowd this ordinary, his shadow followed her. If you've made it this far into the story, let me pause for a moment. Before I tell you why she walked away from the man every woman wanted, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Welcome to MG's Love Stories, where passion burns, hearts break, and you can't stop watching. Don't just listen. Feel it. Like this story, share, subscribe, and let's dive in. That night, Elena tucked Lila into bed. The little girl clutched her stuffed bunny, yawning. "Mommy," she mumbled, "do you think Daddy will ever come find us?" Elena's throat closed. She brushed her daughter's hair back and whispered, "Go to sleep, baby. Mommy's here." But when the light clicked off and silence fell, Elena's heart pounded with fear, because deep down she knew the truth. Men like Adrian Steele didn't stay blind forever. And when he found out about Lila, nothing in Elena's carefully built life would remain the same. The penthouse windows stretched from floor to ceiling, framing the glittering skyline like a painting. Below, the city pulsed with life, traffic crawling like veins, neon lights blinking like restless eyes. But inside the penthouse, the silence was absolute. Adrian Steele stood in the middle of it all, his tailored black suit still pristine after 12 hours of meetings. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand, the amber liquid catching the light. His other hand tugged at his tie, loosening it just enough to breathe. To the world, Adrian was untouchable, the cold, calculating CEO of Steele Enterprises. The man who could buy out competitors with a signature, who could crush rivals without blinking. Every headline crowned him as ruthless, brilliant, dangerous. But tonight, staring out at the city he practically owned, Adrian felt nothing. The money, the power, the endless stream of women who smiled too sweetly at his bank account. None of it touched the emptiness that had been eating him alive for 6 years. 6 years since she left. He never said her name out loud. Not in boardrooms, not in bed, not even when the memories clawed at him in the middle of the night. But he remembered everything. The warmth of her laughter, the fire in her eyes when she challenged him, the feel of her body against his, soft and trembling, yet unyielding, and the way she was gone one morning without a note, without a goodbye. Adrian downed the whiskey in one swallow and set the glass aside. Feelings were useless. Regret was a disease. He had taught himself that long ago. The only thing that mattered was control. The next morning, Adrian sat at the head of a gleaming conference table, his expression carved from stone. Executives lined the room, each one trying not to tremble as they presented quarterly reports. Steele Enterprises now holds 40% of the global shipping market. One of them stammered, "Our competitors are pathetic." Adrian cut in, his voice like ice. "If they can't keep up, they deserve to be devoured." Continue. No one dared to meet his eyes. For years, this was who he had become. The coldest man in the room. The one no one dared to question. It was easier this way. Easier to build an empire on silence than to face the emptiness gnawing inside. But later that evening, as his driver pulled up outside the Halden Hotel, the venue for a high-profile charity gala, Adrian felt something strange. A prickle at the back of his neck. He ignored it. The gala was a formality. Another opportunity to shake hands with senators and investors. Nothing more. Until he saw her. She was across the ballroom, pouring herself a glass of water, laughing at something a friend whispered. She wore a soft blue dress that clung to her curves, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. Elena. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. For the first time in 6 years, his pulse skipped a beat. She looked exactly the same. No, she looked stronger. Softer in some ways, harder in others. A woman who had lived through storms. And she wasn't alone. Beside her, clutching her hand, stood a little girl with long dark hair tied in a pink ribbon. The child tilted her head up at Elena, tugging impatiently on her dress. Adrian froze. His chest constricted as his eyes locked onto the girl's face. Hazel eyes. His eyes. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. His ears rang, drowning out the chatter of the gala. All he could see was that child, no, his child, staring curiously across the room. The spitting image of his 6-year-old self. 6 years. 6 years of silence. 6 years of her hiding. 6 years of raising his daughter behind his back. 1,000 emotions detonated inside him at once. Rage, betrayal, shock, and something deeper, something more dangerous than all the rest. Yearning. Adrian's hand tightened around the stem of his glass until it nearly shattered. His executives whispered around him, mistaking his silence for disinterest. But his entire being was locked on Elena, on the little girl, on the truth that had just ripped his world apart. He didn't approach her that night. He couldn't. If he touched her, if he so much as whispered her name, he wasn't sure what he'd do. But when Elena turned, guiding the girl toward the exit, Adrian's gaze followed them like a predator stalking prey. His heart hammered in his chest with a vow that crystallized with every breath. She kept my child from me. She left me in the dark. She will regret it. I will bring them both back, her and the little girl with my eyes, at any cost. The next morning, Adrian sat in his office, the skyline glittering behind him. Files were spread across his desk, but he couldn't read a single word. His mind replayed the night before on a loop. Elena Alvarez, he muttered under his breath, tasting her name like venom and honey all at once. He opened his laptop. Within minutes, his top investigator was on the line. "Find everything about her," Adrian ordered, his voice sharp as a blade. "Where she's been, where she lives, and most importantly," his jaw tightened, "the child." "Yes, sir." Adrian ended the call and leaned back, pressing his fists against his temples. He should have been furious. He should have wanted to crush her for daring to keep his daughter a secret. And he did. But under the fury was something else. A hollow ache, a desperate need. For the first time in years, Adrian Steele wanted something he couldn't simply buy or conquer. He wanted his family. He stood at the window, watching the city below, his reflection cold and unyielding in the glass. Elena thought she could run. She thought she could erase him from her life. But she underestimated one thing. Adrian Steele had never lost anything he truly wanted. And he wasn't about to start now. Adrian wasn't a man who waited. Patience, for him, was just another word for weakness. By dawn, his investigators already had files spread across his mahogany desk. Her name is Elena Alvarez, age 28, former marketing executive at Steele Enterprises. She resigned abruptly 6 years ago. Adrian's jaw tightened. He remembered the resignation letter. A single sheet of paper left on his desk, and signed, no explanation. He had assumed it was cowardice, a betrayal of loyalty. Never once did he imagine she had walked away carrying his blood inside her. The investigator continued nervously. Since then, she's lived in a small town called Marigold Creek, works as a kindergarten art teacher, lives modestly, no record of major relationships. And the child? Adrian's voice was sharp, cold. The man swallowed. Her daughter, Lila Alvarez, 6 years old. He slid a photograph across the desk. Adrian stared. The little girl was smiling, missing one front tooth, her ribbon slightly crooked. But the eyes, hazel, stormy, sharp, they were his. The same eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. The world slowed. His heart slammed against his ribcage. "She's mine," Adrian said flatly. The investigator cleared his throat. "There's no official paternity test. But, sir, the resemblance is undeniable." Adrian leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. His mind spun with fury and longing. Elena had stolen 6 years from him. 6 birthdays, 6 Christmases, 6 bedtimes where his daughter asked for a father she never knew. His hand clenched into a fist. She had no right. That night, Adrian poured himself another glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. He paced the length of his penthouse like a caged lion. Images of Elena flickered in his mind, the way her laugh used to unravel him, the way her body fit perfectly against his. And then the betrayal, her slipping away in the dark, taking the only softness he had ever known. Now he understood why. She hadn't just left him. She had hidden his daughter. Adrian slammed the glass against the counter, shattering it into 1,000 shards. "Elena," he hissed under his breath, "you think you can keep her from me? You think you can erase me from her life?" A dark, dangerous vow carved itself into his soul. "I will have both of you, and I will never let you go again." The next day, Adrian skipped his board meetings, something he never did. Instead, he drove himself to Marigold Creek. The small town looked like something out of a postcard. Brick sidewalks, flower shops, children riding bicycles. Too normal, too simple. It made his chest ache with bitterness. How had she lived here, peacefully, while he drowned himself in empire and emptiness? He parked across the street from the schoolyard, his tinted windows shielding him. Children played on the swings, their laughter carrying in the wind. Then he saw her, Lila. She was chasing after a ball, her ribbon bouncing with every step. A teacher bent down to tie her shoelace, and when she looked up, Adrian's heart nearly stopped. Elena. She looked softer in daylight, dressed in a simple cardigan and jeans. But he could see it, the quiet strength in her posture, the way her eyes scanned the playground protectively. Adrian gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. His chest burned. 6 years, and she was still his weakness. For a fleeting second, he wanted to step out to call her name, to demand answers. But not yet, not until he had a plan. That evening, Adrian returned to the city. He sat at his desk, staring at the photo of Lila that he had taken from the investigator's file. A child. His child. He could still hear her laughter from the playground, the innocent sound echoing in his ears. It haunted him in a way no business deal, no betrayal ever had. Adrian pressed a hand over his face, his chest heaving. For the first time in years, his cold armor cracked. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about power. He wanted his daughter to know him, to look at him not as a stranger, but as her father. And to do that, he would need Elena. If you were in her shoes right now, what would you do? Would you tell him the truth? Or would you keep hiding his daughter? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know what you'd choose. Adrian pushed the thought aside and picked up his phone. Schedule a meeting with Alvarez, he told his assistant curtly. She doesn't work here anymore, sir, the woman stammered. Adrian's eyes narrowed. She owes me 6 years. Find a reason, an excuse, a lie. I don't care. Just get her in front of me. Yes, Mr. Steele. That night, Adrian barely slept. His dreams were fragmented. Elena laughing in his arms, Elena crying in his office, Elena walking away, and then the little girl calling him daddy. He woke with sweat slicking his skin and a hole in his chest that burned hotter than any empire he had ever built. By morning, his resolve was unshakable. He would confront her. He would take back what was his. And this time, he wouldn't let her slip through his fingers. Not Elena. Not Lila. Not again. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs as she locked the bakery door for the night. The little bell jingled above her head. An innocent sound, the same sound she'd heard every day for years. But tonight, it echoed differently. Tonight, it carried weight. She turned the key, exhaling relief that the day was finally over. Marigold Creek was always quiet after sundown. Safe, predictable. A place where she could pretend that the life she had built was untouchable. Until she felt it. A shift in the air. A shadow stretching across the pavement. Her body went rigid before her mind even caught up. She didn't have to turn around. Some instincts were burned too deep into the bone. Elena. The voice was a blade. Smooth, sharp, and devastatingly familiar. Slowly, she turned. Adrian Knight stood there. 6 years older, but somehow more dangerous. More breathtaking than her memory had dared allow. His expensive suit was out of place on Main Street, but he wore it like armor, like a declaration that he didn't belong to her small, fragile world. His presence sucked all the air from the street, commanding it the way he always had. Her throat dried. You shouldn't be here. His lips curved into a smile, humorless and cold. And yet, here I am. They stared at each other, time folding in on itself, the years vanishing until it felt like no time had passed at all. Except it had. She knew it in the lines around his eyes, the sharper cut of his jaw, the bitterness woven into every inch of his being. Adrian, she whispered, every muscle in her body taut, ready to flee. You need to leave. I think, he said slowly, deliberately, we have a great deal to discuss. Inside the bakery, the lights flickered faintly, catching the flour dust that still lingered in the air. He followed her in, ignoring her protests, closing the door behind him with a finality that made her pulse skitter. The last time she had seen him, she'd been trembling too, but from heartbreak, from the crushing weight of leaving the man she'd loved more than her own breath. Now, she trembled from something else. Fear of what he would do when he learned everything. You're wasting your time, she snapped, forcing strength into her voice. Whatever reason you came here for, You already know why I came here." His interruption was so swift it silenced her. He stepped closer, his eyes, storm gray, unforgiving, burning into hers. "You disappeared, Elena," he said, voice low and simmering. "You vanished from my life without a trace. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Her jaw clenched. "You'll live. You did live." His laugh was sharp, humorless. "Lived? No, I survived. Barely. And then—" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper meant to wound. "I found out you weren't just running from me. You were hiding her." The air cracked between them. Elena's blood turned to ice. "You saw her," she breathed. His silence was answer enough. "Elena." His voice was ragged now, rawer than she'd ever heard it. "You let me walk through this world for 6 years, not knowing I had a daughter. My daughter. You let me grieve a future I thought I'd lost, all while you—" His gaze flicked away, as if the thought was too unbearable to finish. "You kept her from me." Her heart twisted. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You wouldn't have understood," she whispered. "You wouldn't have wanted her. You wouldn't have wanted us." His fury snapped like glass. "How dare you decide that for me?" he roared, slamming his palm against the counter, making the flour jar rattle. "You don't get to rewrite my choices. You don't get to erase me from her life. She's happy," Elena shouted back, her voice breaking under the pressure of holding years of pain inside. "She's safe. She's loved. She's whole. I gave her everything I could. And I wasn't going to let you, your empire, your coldness, your world, destroy that." Adrian's jaw locked, his chest heaving as he stared at her. The silence between them was brutal, filled with things unsaid and wounds unhealed. Finally, he stepped closer, so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him. His voice was quiet now, but the danger in it was louder than his rage had ever been. "You really thought you could hide her from me forever?" Elena's breath shuddered. "I had to try." His hand lifted, hesitating in the air before brushing against her cheek. The contact was soft, almost reverent, but his eyes were fierce. "You're mine, Elena," he whispered. "You always were. And now—" His lips curved, dark and possessive. "So is she. I'll have you both back. Whatever it takes. At any cost." Her tears slipped free then, traitorous, betraying her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to scream, to push him away. But standing in front of him, with his touch burning into her skin, she remembered every reason she had loved him once, and every reason she had run. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice breaking, "don't do this." But his mind was already made. He stepped back, his expression settling into that unshakable, ruthless mask she remembered too well. "This isn't a request," he said coldly. "It's a promise." And with that, he turned, leaving her standing in the hollow quiet of her bakery, shaking, shattered, and terrified of what was to come. The next few days felt like walking on glass for Elena. Adrian had reduced the icy CEO mask, at least in front of Lila. With her, he was surprisingly gentle, patient, even playful in ways that made Elena's chest ache. Every time Lila laughed at something Adrian said, Elena found herself silently cursing her heart for melting, because she knew exactly where this was leading. Adrian wasn't the type of man to accept half-truths. He wouldn't be satisfied until he knew the whole story, until Elena finally told him the words she'd been running from for years, that he was Lila's father. But every time she looked into those stormy gray eyes, her throat closed up. He had once been her entire world, her first everything. And when she left, she had sworn she'd never crawl back, never expose her daughter to the cold shadow of Adrian Knight's ruthless empire. And yet, here he was, sitting cross-legged on Elena's worn-out couch, letting Lila braid his hair with those tiny fingers, laughing when the rubber band snapped against his temple. It wasn't the Adrian she remembered. It wasn't the man she had convinced herself he had become. It was worse, because this version of him was even harder to resist. Meanwhile, Adrian was fighting his own battle. Every second spent with Lila pulled him deeper into a confusing storm. The girl was bright, sharp, and carried the same defiant fire he once admired in Elena. But there was more things he couldn't ignore. The tilt of her chin, the shade of her eyes, the stubborn way she argued her point until she won. It was uncanny, maddening, and somewhere deep down he already knew the truth. But Adrian Knight didn't deal in speculation. He dealt in facts, and until Elena said the words herself, he would drag it out of her if he had to. One evening, the storm finally broke. Rain pelted against the windows as thunder rolled across the sky. Elena had just tucked Lila into bed when she found Adrian standing in the kitchen, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at the downpour. The sight was dangerous. He looked too much like temptation itself. His shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, hair still slightly messy from Lila's playful braiding earlier. "Do you always drink this late?" Elena asked softly, trying to break the tension. He turned, slow, deliberate. His gaze pinned her in place. "Only when I'm waiting for answers." Her breath caught. "Elena." His voice was a low growl now, all softness gone. "How long were you planning to keep lying to me?" She froze, the words piercing through her like a blade. I don't know what you mean." Adrian's jaw tightened. He set the glass down with a sharp clink and stepped closer, closing the space between them. The storm outside seemed to mirror the storm in his eyes. "Don't play games with me. Not with this. She's mine, isn't she?" Elena's heart pounded so loudly she swore he could hear it. "Adrian, she's my daughter." His voice cracked with something rawer than she had ever heard from him. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something dangerously close to desperation. Elena swallowed hard, her walls collapsing. Her lips parted, trembling with words she'd buried for years. But before she could answer, "Mommy!" Both of them whipped around. Lila stood in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Why are you yelling?" she asked, her little voice cutting straight through the tension. Elena's throat burned as she rushed forward, kneeling in front of her daughter. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Mommy and Adrian were just talking." But when she looked up, Adrian was still staring at her, his chest rising and falling like a man who had been holding his breath for years. His eyes shifted briefly to Lila, and that single glance said it all. He knew, and this time, no storm could wash away the truth. Later that night, after Lila had been soothed back to sleep, Elena sat alone on the edge of her bed. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her face. The secret was out. She could no longer hide behind excuses or half-truths. Adrian had seen enough. He didn't need her confession anymore. He had confirmation written in Lila's very existence. But what terrified her wasn't his knowing. It was what he would do next. Would he take Lila away? Use his power, his money, his influence to strip Elena of the only thing she had left? Or would he fight for them both? Her chest tightened. For the first time in years, Elena realized she wasn't just afraid of losing her daughter. She was afraid of losing Adrian, too. If you were in Adrian's shoes, finding out you had a secret child, what would you do? Fight for them or walk away? Comment your answer below. I'm dying to know. By the time dawn broke, Adrian was gone, but not before leaving a note on her kitchen counter. "You should have told me. We'll talk soon." Elena clutched the paper to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. The storm had passed, but the war for her heart and her daughter was only beginning. The city's skyline glittered under the night, its thousand lights reflecting the restless energy of Adrian Voss. He stood in his penthouse office, the floor-to-ceiling windows stretching wide, his hands shoved into his pockets. On the desk behind him, contracts and board reports were stacked in neat piles, evidence of the empire he had built. But tonight, Adrian's mind wasn't on his empire. It was on Elena and Lila. For the first time in years, he wasn't strategizing a business takeover. He was strategizing how to bring his family back together. Elena's small apartment felt like a world away from the sleek towers Adrian commanded. That night, she heard the familiar knock, controlled, steady, yet carrying an urgency that twisted her stomach. She opened the door to find Adrian, tailored suit loosened, his dark hair slightly disheveled. He looked less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man unraveling. "Elena," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." Her pulse raced. "Adrian, not here. Lila's sleeping." "I don't care." He cut in, his jaw tightening. "I can't keep pretending this. This distance is enough. She's my daughter. And you—" His voice faltered for the briefest moment. "You're still mine, Elena." Her breath caught, but she shook her head, stepping back to create space between them. "You don't get to say that after everything. You can't just claim me, claim us like you're acquiring another company." He stepped forward, closing the gap. "This isn't business. This is blood. This is family. I missed 5 years of my daughter's life because you decided for both of us." Her eyes glistened with tears, but she held firm. "I decided because you didn't know how to love Adrian. You knew how to control, how to build, how to win, but not how to love. And I wasn't going to raise Lila in a house where power mattered more than affection." Her words landed like a blow. For a moment, Adrian was silent, his chest rising and falling sharply. He turned away, dragging a hand over his face. His voice came rough. "Do you have any idea what it's like to walk into that park and see her? To see her smile at me and not know me? Do you know what that does to a man who's built entire empires and never felt powerless?" Until that moment. Elena's throat tightened. Adrian turned back, eyes blazing but softer than she'd ever seen. "I am not asking you. I am telling you, I will not lose her. And I will not lose you again, Elena. I'll fight for this, no matter what it takes. You can't bulldoze your way into our lives," she whispered, voice trembling. His lips curved bitterly. "Watch me." The next morning, Adrian's empire intruded. At Voss Global headquarters, board members whispered behind closed doors. A tabloid had published photographs. Adrian in the park with Lila, bending down to tie her shoe, smiling in a way none of them had ever seen. The headline screamed, "The Ice King's secret daughter?" The board was livid. Investors called nonstop. His image, carefully crafted, relentlessly cold, was unraveling. "Is it true?" demanded Richard, his oldest board member, as Adrian strode into the emergency meeting. "Is she your child?" Adrian's jaw set. "Yes." The room erupted. "You've jeopardized the company's image," one director shouted. "This could tank our negotiations with Easton Corp," another snapped. "You need to keep this quiet. Handle it." Adrian slammed a hand on the table. The sharp crack silenced the room. "You forget yourselves. I built this empire. Without me, there is no Voss Global. If you think a child, my child, makes me weaker, you're wrong. She makes me stronger." The board exchanged uneasy glances. Adrian's authority was absolute, but scandal made even kings vulnerable. Meanwhile, Elena saw the headlines too. She sat on her couch, phone buzzing with messages from friends, co-workers, strangers. Her chest tightened with dread. This was exactly what she'd feared. Lila dragged into the spotlight of Adrian's ruthless world. When Adrian showed up again that evening, Elena was waiting, arms crossed, eyes flashing. "Do you see what's happening? She's 5 years old, Adrian. And the world is already dissecting her life." Adrian closed the door gently behind him, his face unreadable. "I didn't leak that story." "Maybe not," Elena shot back. "But your world did. Your name, your power, it's a magnet for chaos. And Lila will be caught in it." He exhaled, moving closer. "Then let me protect her. Let me protect both of you." Her resolve wavered. His words were soft, but his presence pressed heavy against her defenses. Later, when Lila padded out of her bedroom in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, Adrian immediately dropped to one knee. "Hey, princess," he whispered, brushing her hair back. "Daddy, why are people taking pictures of us?" she asked innocently. Adrian froze, his throat tight. Elena's heart clenched. He swallowed hard and pulled her into his arms. "Because they've never seen anyone as beautiful as you," he said softly, kissing the top of her head. Lila giggled sleepily, and Adrian held her tighter. his mask of steel cracking in ways Elena never thought possible. Watching him, Elena realized the truth she didn't want to face. Adrian wasn't just fighting for control. He was fighting because he truly loved their daughter. Maybe even her. The following day, Adrian made his move. He returned to Elena's apartment, his expression resolute. "I won't let the board, the press, or anyone else dictate how I handle this. But I need you to understand something, Elena. I want you both in my life. Not just weekends, not just visits. Full time. Come back with me." Her breath hitched. "Adrian." He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. "This isn't just about me wanting my family. It's about Lila deserving both her parents. I can give her the world, but I can't give her love without you." The silence stretched thick between them, her heart warring with her fear. Adrian's eyes bore into hers. "Choose me, Elena. Choose us." Her chest ached. "And if I don't? What happens if I can't live in your world?" "Adrian." His jaw tightened. "Then I'll fight. I'll fight until you see that this us is inevitable." Elena's hands trembled. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe he had changed. But could a man like Adrian Voss truly put love above power? Her silence was his answer for now. That night, as Adrian returned to his penthouse, he stared at the city sprawling beneath him. For the first time in his life, victory wasn't about contracts or acquisitions. It was about a woman who challenged him and a little girl who had stolen his heart. And he vowed, with the cold determination that had built an empire, he would not lose them. Not again. Not ever. The night was cold, but Adrian's blood boiled hotter than fire. He stood in his penthouse office, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand, his reflection staring back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind him, the city pulsed with life. Traffic, neon lights, laughter. But all he felt was the silence Elena had left him in after storming out of his house with Lila. His daughter. His daughter. The words still rang in his head like a church bell, deafening and relentless. For 6 years, he had lived like a machine. Contracts, mergers, billion-dollar deals, women whose names he never remembered the morning after. And all that time, Elena had been raising his child. Alone. That betrayal gnawed at him like a starving wolf. But the sharper pain, the fact that she hadn't trusted him enough to tell him. He slammed the glass onto the desk, amber liquid spilling onto important papers. He didn't care. For the first time in years, Adrian King wasn't thinking about his empire. He was thinking about a little girl with Elena's smile and his eyes. He whispered, almost broken, "Lila." Meanwhile, Elena was pacing her living room floor, her body trembling with anger and fear. Lila was asleep in her bedroom, her small breath steady, her innocence intact. But Elena knew it was only a matter of time before Adrian came knocking again. He wasn't the kind of man to let go, especially not of something he saw as his. But Lila wasn't a thing. She was her daughter, their daughter. Elena pressed her palms against her face, tears leaking through her fingers. Why did it have to be him? Why couldn't the past have stayed buried? Her phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. "This isn't over. You kept her from me. But I will not let you keep her any longer. Be ready." Her stomach dropped. She typed furiously. "She's not a deal, Adrian. She's not part of your empire. She's a little girl. My little girl. You don't get to march in after 6 years and claim her like she's property." She hit send. Seconds later, 3 dots appeared. Then his reply, "Ours. She's ours. And you know damn well I won't walk away." Elena's hand shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't just about revenge. Adrian wanted Lila. And deep down, Elena knew he wanted her too. That was the most terrifying part. Viewers, what would you do if you were in Elena's shoes right now? Would you protect the child at all costs? Or would you let Adrian in? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. The next morning, Adrian showed up at Lila's school. He didn't walk in like the billionaire CEO. He was towering, cold, commanding. He walked in like a man on a mission. His security detail waited outside, but Adrian entered the gates alone, blending in with the other parents. When Lila came running out of class, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders, Adrian's breath hitched. She was talking excitedly to another girl, her laughter bright, her little hands animated as she spoke. She was perfect. He hadn't known it was possible to feel so much pride and ache for someone he barely knew. "Lila," he said softly. The little girl turned. She blinked up at him, curious. "Mr. Adrian?" she asked shyly, recognizing him from the day before. Her voice melted something in him. "Yes, sweetheart." He crouched down, lowering himself to her height. I just wanted to say hi." She tilted her head. "Do you know my mommy?" Adrian's throat closed. The truth burned in his chest, but he couldn't drop the bomb here. Not now. "Yes," he managed, his voice thick. "I know her very well." Before Lila could ask more, Elena appeared like a storm. She rushed forward, pulling Lila close to her side, glaring daggers at Adrian. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "Meeting my daughter." Adrian shot back, his voice low but fierce. Lila looked between them, confused. "Mommy? What's going on?" Elena swallowed hard, forcing a smile for her daughter. "Nothing, baby. Go wait by the gate. Mommy's right behind you." "But..." "Now, Lila." Reluctantly, the little girl obeyed, leaving Adrian and Elena locked in a dangerous stare. "You had no right," Elena snapped. "You don't get to ambush her like this." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I have every right. She's my child, Elena. Mine. And the fact that you think you can erase me from her life makes me furious. She doesn't even know you." Elena's voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what kind of confusion you're putting her through? She's happy, Adrian. She's safe. Why can't you just let her be?" His eyes softened, just for a moment. "Because she deserves to know her father. And you and I both know. This isn't just about her." Her chest heaved. Don't go there." But it was too late. Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice a velvet knife. "You still feel it too. Don't deny it." Her lips trembled, betraying her. "You're wrong." "Am I?" His gaze flicked down to her mouth, then back to her eyes. The silence between them crackled, heavy with the tension of a love neither of them had ever buried. For a heartbeat, Elena's knees weakened. She hated him, God. She hated him, but one look, one word, and the pull of their history wrapped around her like chains. She tore herself away. "Stay away from us, Adrian, or I swear you'll regret it." Later that night, Adrian sat in his car, replaying her words. "Stay away." He smiled bitterly. "Not a chance." He pulled out his phone, dialed his lawyer. "I need custody options on the table. Now." If this story has you hooked so far, don't forget to like this video. It helps push MG's love stories to more people who crave these twists and heartbreaks just like you. Back at Elena's apartment, she clutched Lila tightly as she slept. She could feel the storm brewing. Adrian wasn't just going to walk away. He was a man who got everything he wanted. And right now, he wanted them. She stared at her daughter's peaceful face and whispered through tears, "I'll protect you, no matter what it takes." But deep down, she wasn't sure if she was trying to protect Lila from Adrian or herself, because the truth was, despite everything, part of her still wanted to fall back into his arms. And that terrified her more than anything. The polished wood of the courtroom gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, its cold atmosphere pressing down on everyone inside. Elena sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her hands clenched so tightly on her lap that her knuckles whitened. Across the aisle, Adrian looked as calm and unreadable as stone, his custom suit perfectly tailored, his cufflinks gleaming like quiet threats. They hadn't spoken since their last argument. Now, words would be exchanged through lawyers, sharpened and brutal. The judge entered, robes billowing as everyone rose. Elena felt her heart hammer in her throat, her eyes flicking to Lila, who wasn't there, thank God. She was at school, blissfully unaware that her parents were about to tear each other apart. The clerk called the case. Adrian Steele versus Elena Alvarez. Petition for shared custody. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Elena's stomach flipped. He had made good on his word. He was fighting for Lila. Not quietly, not gently, but through the full force of the law. Adrian's lawyer, a silver-haired shark with a voice like a blade, rose first. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Steele, has recently discovered that he is the biological father of the child, Lila. Despite being kept in the dark for years, he wishes to provide for her, guide her, and ensure she has every opportunity befitting her potential. Mr. Steele is not seeking to strip custody from Miss Alvarez, but rather to share it, to be given the chance to father his daughter, as is his right. Adrian sat still, his eyes fixed on Elena. She refused to look at him. Her own lawyer, a younger woman with fire in her eyes, rose. Your Honor, this case is not about wealth or opportunities. It is about stability. For 7 years, Miss Alvarez has single-handedly raised her child. Lila has known one home, one set of values, one loving, consistent parent. To disrupt that now would be to uproot her world. Mr. Steele's sudden interest is not fatherhood. It's possession. The words sliced through Adrian, but his face betrayed nothing. Witnesses were called. Elena listened as a neighbor spoke warmly of her devotion as a mother, the sacrifices she'd made. A teacher described Lila as bright, empathetic, secure, a reflection of the nurturing environment at home. Then Adrian's side struck back. His assistant testified to his philanthropy, his ability to provide education, travel, healthcare, things Elena could never match. His private investigator dropped the bombshell. Photographs of Elena's modest apartment, of her working late shifts, of bills she had struggled to pay. Humiliation burned through her like acid. But worse was the implication that love wasn't enough, that because she didn't have billions, she was somehow failing Lila. Elena herself was called to the stand. The shark of a lawyer approached, his tone polite but dripping with menace. Miss Alvarez, did you ever inform my client that he had fathered a child? Elena's throat tightened. No. Why not? Her voice cracked. Because I knew what kind of man he was. Cold, ruthless, married to his work. I couldn't let my daughter grow up feeling unloved. A murmur swept the room. Adrian's jaw tightened, but still he said nothing. Miss Alvarez, is it true that you've sometimes struggled financially? Yes. Is it true that you live in a one-bedroom apartment? Yes. Is it true that your daughter shares that bedroom with you? Elena's voice was a whisper. Yes. The lawyer turned to the judge. No further questions. Your Honor, I ask you, is this stability? Is this in the best interest of the child? Elena felt her body shake with rage and shame. When Adrian took the stand, Elena's chest constricted. His lawyer questioned him gently, like polishing a diamond. Mr. Steele, why do you want custody of your daughter? Adrian's deep voice filled the room. Because she's mine. Because I love her. Because she deserves more than I ever had. More than Elena can give. She deserves the world, and I can give it to her. The lawyer nodded. Were you aware you had a daughter until recently? No, his eyes flicked to Elena at last, sharp and accusing. She kept her from me. The words were a dagger. Elena wanted to scream. When her lawyer cross-examined him, the tension snapped like a whip. Mr. Steele, you admit you've never been a father before? You've never changed a diaper, stayed up with a sick child, attended a school conference. His jaw clenched. No, but I can learn. You're a billionaire CEO running a global empire. How much time do you realistically have to give this child? As much as she needs, he bit out. Or as much as your schedule allows. Adrian glared at the lawyer, then at Elena. He wanted to roar, to insist that Lila wasn't a footnote in his life. But the courtroom silenced even him. The session dragged on for hours. By the time court adjourned for the day, Elena's nerves were frayed raw. She stepped into the hallway, desperate for air. Adrian followed. Elena! His voice was low, dangerous. She whirled on him. How dare you? You turned my life into a spectacle. You dragged me through the mud, humiliated me in front of strangers. I'm fighting for my daughter. He cut in. She's my daughter. She's ours. His eyes blazed, fury and longing entwined. You don't get to erase me anymore. Elena's voice trembled. You don't understand. Lila doesn't need your money. She doesn't need your empire. She needs peace. Adrian stepped closer, towering over her, his presence magnetic and suffocating. And she'll have it with both of us. I won't let you shut me out again, Elena. Not this time. Not ever. Her breath caught. For a moment, they stood inches apart, their old fire flickering between them, dangerous and undeniable. But then Elena tore herself away, blinking back tears. I won't lose her, Adrian, even if it means losing you. The next morning, the judge addressed them sternly. This court is not blind to the tension between you, but let me remind both parties. This is not about pride, wealth, or past grievances. It is about the best interest of a child. If you cannot reach a compromise, I will impose one, and you may not like the outcome. Elena sat frozen. Adrian's fists curled at his sides. The judge's words echoed through the chamber like a prophecy. Compromise or consequences. As court adjourned, Adrian's lawyer whispered something to him. Elena watched as Adrian's face darkened, then settled into an expression she knew too well. The mask of a man about to win at any cost. Her stomach sank. Adrian Steele was a man who had never lost a battle in his life. And now the battlefield was their daughter. The custody battle had ended, the courtroom gavel's final strike still echoing in Elena's chest. Against all odds, Adrian had withdrawn his claim, stunning the legal world. He had the resources, the lawyers, the sheer corporate power to take Lila from Elena. Yet in the end, he had looked into his daughter's eyes on that witness stand, seen her small hands trembling, and chosen differently. Now, weeks later, the storm had settled into something quieter. Not peace, not yet. Something fragile. Elena stood at the kitchen counter, stirring soup, her hands moving on instinct. She heard giggles from the living room. Lila's clear, high laugh mixed with Adrian's deeper chuckle. For a moment she leaned against the counter, eyes closing, overwhelmed. This was the life she had once dreamed of. Laughter in the house, Adrian's presence not as an enemy, but as something warm, steady. And yet it came not without cost. She turned, watching them. Adrian sat cross-legged on the floor in his expensive suit pants, tie discarded, as Lila crowned him with a paper tiara. His hand rested on her small back as if anchoring himself to her, to this fragile reality. Daddy, Lila grinned. You're the king now. Adrian smiled. An actual smile, uncalculated, unguarded. Then that makes you the princess. His eyes flicked briefly to Elena. And your mother? His voice softened. The queen. Elena's heart twisted. Later that evening, after Lila had gone to bed, Adrian lingered by the window. Elena joined him, arms folded, the silence thick. You could have taken her, she said finally, her voice trembling. You had every chance to win. He turned to her, eyes darker now, that old steel flashing. Win? Elena, if I'd won in court, I would have lost her. I saw it in her eyes. She doesn't just want me. She wants us. A family. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. But years of absence, of betrayal, of cold silences still burned inside her. Adrian, she whispered, shaking her head. I don't know if I can trust you not to choose power again. Not to shut me out when it gets hard. For the first time, his shoulders sagged. The ruthless billionaire, the untouchable CEO, suddenly looked almost human. Then don't trust my words. Watch my actions. Let me prove it. She said nothing. Tears stung her eyes, and she turned away. A week later, Adrian called Elena to the company headquarters. She walked into his office, wary, expecting more contracts, more negotiations. Instead, he slid a single envelope across the desk. What is this? She asked, fingers hesitating on the seal. My resignation, he said simply. Her head snapped up. What? I built an empire, Elena, but it's cold, empty. If I keep it, I lose you both. I can't. I won't. His voice broke slightly, almost too low to catch. I've arranged a successor. I'm stepping away. I want to build something new. With you. With Lila. Her chest constricted. It was everything she once prayed for, and yet, it terrified her. Adrian. Her voice was small, almost childlike. What if it's too late? He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers on the desk. Then I'll spend the rest of my life. That night, Elena tucked Lila into bed. The little girl, half asleep, mumbled, "Mommy, Daddy's staying this time, right?" Elena's throat closed. She brushed her daughter's hair back and whispered, "Yes, baby, he's staying." Later, she found Adrian sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. She sat beside him, their hands brushing but not yet fully entwined. The night was quiet, holding the weight of everything unsaid. For the first time in years, she let herself lean against his shoulder. "Don't break us again," she whispered. "I won't," he vowed, voice raw. And yet, as the night wrapped around them, both knew that scars remained. Wounds that love alone could not erase. The road ahead would be hard, uneven, but they had chosen it. Together, Lila stirred in her sleep inside, dreaming of fairy tales and crowns. Outside, her parents sat beneath the stars, two broken people, holding on to the fragile hope of a new beginning. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was theirs. If you enjoyed The Billionaire CEO's Secret Child, don't forget to vote to show your love. Add to your library so you won't miss updates and extras. Comment your thoughts. I'd love to know your favorite moments so far. Your support keeps me writing and makes this story grow. Stay tuned, because love, secrets, and power games are never truly over.